Kill you and eat you.
Hey everybody, how are you guys doing today? My name is Nick, otherwise known here as Avialence, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my first few days within The Long Dark. So what is The Long Dark? It's actually an early access Steam game that released this week, made by Hinterland Studio. It is an early access game, so I do want to put a disclaimer in it that the game is not complete. You are participating in the development of the game by paying $19.99, which is the purchase price for this game. Now, I had the luxury of spending a few hours with the game. I have survived a few days, and I figured I'd go ahead and talk to you guys about my experience as well as the premise of the game, and if this is something that could do well on my channel here, then I'll certainly bring it back with a couple more videos. Now, the premise of the game is very simple. A mysterious geomagnetic storm has brought your plane down in the northern Canadian wilderness, and the idea is, can you survive? So this is a survival game, but the one thing I really appreciate about this game is it's not a survival horror game. We've had a lot of survival horror games, Outlast, we have Alien Isolation coming out, we have The Evil Within coming out, and they all kind of branched off of Amnesia, which was very much so an indie game, I would argue. Now, we also had games like Daisy, which focused on survival, but again, a little more intense, a little more crazy, and most of these Daisy-type games are multiplayer. Now, the one thing I like about The Long Dark is it is, in fact, single-player currently. You are thrown in a sandbox. You can select a male or female character, both of which the voice acting is actually extremely well done for an alpha. The voices sound very familiar. I can't quite place them yet because I haven't done too much research on the game, but I definitely will be looking that up in the future. Now, the Canadian wilderness is gorgeous in The Long Dark, and when you first drop down after the plane crash, you will walk around and see a lot of different things. In the Canadian wilderness, I was actually very surprised how fast I was able to be degraded. I immediately thought, okay, well, what are my basic premises? And looking in games like Daisy and being a veteran of those games, I immediately thought weapons. And that's simply not the truth in this game. While I did find a weapon later on in the form of an older hunting rifle, it wasn't what I needed. Now, equipment here is broken down into various categories. Each piece of equipment will have a weight limit, and your weight limit is currently 30 kilograms, which is a lot, all things considered. It's just about management. And since it's a single-player world, I wasn't too worried about placing my items in various containers so that I could build up storages while I was exploring, right? And this is something that I did quite frequently towards the end of my playtime. So, the first of these categories is going to be clothing. It has a durability and heat resist rating. The durability will wear, obviously, as you wear it more often and take damage from the various wild animals that you'll encounter in the world of The Long Dark. And then the heat resist rating, obviously, it's Canadian wilderness, so it's going to be snowing. You want to have a high heat resist rating because you can freeze to death in this game. It's a very big mechanic of the game. Now you also have first aid, which focuses on medicine, antibiotics, painkillers. These are basically to keep you up and going and help you survive those crazy encounters, which you will have with a lot of the Canadian wildlife, that at least so far, those are the only type of encounters I've had. So you have to bandage yourself. There is blood loss in this game. There is infection in this game, and it's all in the alpha, and it's very well done so far. Now, you also have food and drink. I feel that this is pretty self-explanatory. You will have the opportunity to gut and then cook meat from various animals that you can hunt out in the world. You also have materials such as leather, cloth, etc., scraps and stuff that you can use to put together, fix up your clothes, or maybe build certain things in the future. You also have tools. These are can openers, hatchets, etc., used for gathering various materials around the world. And, of course, other, which is the classification for anything else that they don't have in one of these categories. The main other item I found was my gas for the lanterns or kerosene fuel to power various other items in the world. Now, the main point of the game here in my first experience was survival. It took me a while to figure everything out, and that's something I really appreciated. I came into the game, I immediately thought, okay, well, I've got to survive, so let's look for weapons. I looked a lot for weapons, couldn't find one, and then I ended up going to food. That's the one thing I really appreciate about this game. It's not like Daisy or many of the Daisy clones, which I think, again, are a different type of game, but it's what I closely associate survival to, just due to my playtime with those titles. But it's focused on food, water, and understanding the map, and since there's actually no map in the alpha right now, it's phenomenal because I actually feel like I'm exploring the wilderness. I had to learn the game. I had to learn that I actually had to load my hunting rifle physically before shooting. I went up to shoot a deer. had them in my sights, was ready to pop them and get some deer meat for myself because I was about to starve to death, and I found out that I did not load my rifle. It's just little moments like that really make me appreciate what this game is doing. Now, as far as my journey goes, I went through a lot of different things. I spawned in. I found one thing that was a little interesting is there's actually no plane crash, so you can't loot your plane, which I'm assuming would have supplies. You're started with a small amount of supplies, including a flare, some basic clothes, and things of that nature, but all in all, I'm looking forward to hopefully having a plane crash added into the game that we can loot from the get-go, maybe with a rifle or just, something to help us get started. Now, that being said, I did enjoy my journey. I first went up to a giant watchtower, which I found after trekking through the snow, and while walking down from the watchtower the following morning after using some wood in the watchtower, and eating what food I found up there, I walked down and I actually slipped and sprained my ankle. I thought this was a very cool mechanic. So I did sprain my ankle from a small drop, and then I had to walk with a limp. I could not run. I could only walk, and I found this very refreshing, a bit frustrating. Now, there's obviously cures for these kind of problems. For a sprained ankle, you take painkillers and you rest for 4 hours, and that's how it goes away. Or you can rest for, a substantial amount of time. Now, the one thing I found very interesting is just how the different resources are managed in this game. You obviously have your freeze, which is your resistance to freeze, and you can freeze to death in this game if you're caught in a snowstorm, which I actually almost had happen to me at the end of my playtime. You can also, run out of food, get hungry, die from hunger and starvation, which is based off of a calorie system that is very, very brutal until you figure out how to manage it. Very cool elements in this game that I really appreciate and I want to dig further into. Now, my journey took me from that watchtower across, with a sprained ankle, across a giant field that actually brought me into a dam. Now, when I was in that dam, I was attacked by an animal. The animals currently are wolves. I'm not sure if there's going to be anything else added to the game, but the wolves were the only animals I experienced with my playtime that would actually attack me. So I had to deal with a wolf, and it was a little frustrating at first. It's the left mouse button you click to build up your attack, fight him off, and then right mouse button to get an attack in and hopefully finish the wolf off. But he ambushed me in the dam where I had a sprained ankle and I actually wasn't able to run away from him. It's surprising and scary in its own way, but I like the idea that it's the wilderness and it's realistic compared to the whole zombie craze that you would typically expect in a survival horror game, or, even in regular survival horror games, the idea that they're monsters and they're horrible beasts. It was nice to have something grounded in reality and something that was really refreshing for me personally. Now, after moving on from the dam, I went out to hunt. I ended up doing a little bit of hunting and tried to eat some meat in order to gain calories. Now, I ate raw meat and ended up with food poisoning, and I think the funny thing was I ended up burning those calories while sleeping off the food poisoning, which was quite funny. I thoroughly enjoyed that, though. I mean, it's kind of a learning curve, and now I know that, and I will not be doing that again. From there, I actually went on to explore with my hunting rifle, did a little more hunting, cooked the meat this time, and came across an old train that had lost a couple cars, so I looted those train cars, debated sleeping in there, but decided against it because there were a couple frozen bodies there that I didn't really want to sleep next to. And when I was just about to, die of exhaustion, because that's another element in this game, I came across a cabin where I ended up setting up shop, putting my sweaters in the closet, clearing everything out, and organizing my food and medication, which is where I ended my playtime after building a fire. The game is awesome, guys, and this is one of those Steam Early Access games because I'm typically skeptical about these kind of programs, especially through Steam Early Access because there's so many titles out there, but this is one of those games that I'm honestly going to recommend only after having a few hours of playtime. If you're looking for something that's definitely stylized, it feels very Borderlandsy in its art style, which is refreshing. It almost reminds me of a game called Firewatch, which is another indie title I got to take a peek at. Not play, but just take a peek at, when the trailers were released a couple weeks ago. It's a different art style. I really appreciate it, and it's gorgeous in its own right. So Hinterland Studio, great work, guys. I thoroughly enjoyed my first couple hours with The Long Dark, and I cannot wait to get some more playtime in. So, guys, if you haven't checked it out already, I highly recommend taking a couple, hours away from your time, or If you're looking for a good indie title to check out, The Long Dark is now at the top of my list as far as my interests go. And if you guys would like to see more on the channel, feel free to let me know. But that's about it, guys. So if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, subscribe here for gaming commentary and gaming coverage on a weekly basis. My name is Nick, otherwise known here as Avialence. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm about to go try to survive a couple more days in the Canadian wilderness.